So we can go ahead and get started just so we can have ample amount of time for the class. My name is Riley Myhaver. I'm an assistant director of admissions in our office here at Tufts. I've been at Tufts for about 2 years. So I will be kind of here in the background, but I'm going to pass it over to Holly Tarnower to introduce herself and get the class started.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Yes, my name is Holly Tarnower. I'm a lecturer at Tufts in the Gordon Institute. And the class that I teach that you're going to get a little mock class of right now is called right now it's called Communication Skills for Personal and Professional Life, and it is in the mode of transitioning to now be vocal arts for personal and professional life, or vocal arts for leadership. So I'm very excited to see folks. Yes, and keep on filling that chat out because I really want to hear where people are. Oh my goodness. So all the way from India, we're reaching, California, Brazil, amazing. New York City. I'm in Boston. I'm technically Watertown, Massachusetts. And I have worked at Tufts. This is my second year. I'm absolutely loving it. And I also have worked at Emerson College in Boston for about 7 years. So I'm so happy to have you all here tonight. And this might be a question for Riley as well, but will we be able to have folks put their video on and talk and interact?
We will not be able to have cameras on, so it will be all through the chat function.
Okay, all through the chat function. Okay, thank you. Um, So then the first little exercise I would love for us to do, and great, is to write a little elevator pitch. And this is something I teach in my class. So something that's great to have in a networking event or going into a new situation is a little elevator pitch. So just a small sentence or two about yourself, what you're interested in pursuing, perhaps what you specialize in. So mine would be something like, hi, my name is Holly Tarnower. I'm an educator with over a decade of experience. I specialize in multiple intelligence-based curriculum and I through a holistic classroom approach. So great. Perfect. So, and you can send your elevator pitches to Riley too. So I'd love you to just think about it for a few seconds and start sending out your elevator pitches. So your name, maybe where you're from, something that what you are interested in maybe majoring in, not that you need to know. Please know, you do not need to know what you want to major in yet, but what you're interested in studying or what you're really into, what you specialize in, any of the above. So just 2 to 3 sentences of an elevator pitch. Send it on out. Okay. And I know I see some people saying their chat is disabled, so I'm sure Riley is on that. Awesome. So my name is Lily from New Jersey, and I'm looking to study something in the humanities or social sciences. Amazing. I love that. Sylvie, senior in New York City, interested in psychology, French, and political science. Oh, amazing. So many things. Claudia from Chicago would love to major in history or public policy. Amazing. Neuroscience. Okay, incredible. Oh my goodness, economics and theater. Well, Palak, theater is my other specialty. It's what I teach at Emerson College. So I love the idea of that combination. And if you do come to Tufts, I would definitely encourage you to take my class because I very much combine sort of the entrepreneurship with theater skills that people aren't maybe used to if they don't do theater, but that are very much applicable to the business world and just functioning and networking. Austin. Oh, ballet dancer. So amazing. Chemistry and psychology. Love that. Ah, another Massachusetts. Great. Healthcare field. Nurse. Amazing. Sure you know Tufts is an amazing, amazing place for any pre-med sort of field. Oh, Mexico. I wish I was in Mexico right now. It's getting chilly. Amazing. Brain science and environmental advocacy. We actually just had a guest lecturer in my class who is a senior consultant at a company called DMV and is a in the green energy environmental advocacy field. And he spoke a lot about what his work involves and the different kinds of communication that he has. So again, if you come to Tufts, please take my class. Amazing. Triple majoring, cog and brain. Oh my goodness, so many incredibly impressive folks. Wow, nationally ranked soccer player. Oh my goodness. Assisting neurodiverse special needs, a huge passion of mine as well. That is so wonderful. And I think you definitely should pursue developmental psychology and think about ways to maybe combine your passions. New York City, see? Biology. Amazing. Future neurosurgeon. Incredible. Well, okay. So you're all just incredibly impressive. Biology. Awesome. So many different folks from different, all walks of life, all different parts of the country and the world, and so many different interests and unbelievably impressive things. So I love that. Brazil. Amazing. Love it. Awesome. So as folks filter in or you're not, if you're still working, no worries, take your time. I just going to, and Riley, I might, yes. Great, yes. So, and I will keep on reading those answers as they come in. I am just not seeing the screen share where I normally see it. So I just want to make sure we got that.
You should be able to screen share at the bottom, the share with the green arrow.
Oh, got it, got it.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. All right, so I am going to, yes, and please keep those elevator pitches coming. I love it, and I will continue to read those out when they come in. But I'm going to share my screen for a second and just show you my syllabus and give you just a little taste of what I do in my class and how things are. So perfect. All right. So folks should be able to see. Perfect. So as you see, we have communication skills for personal and professional life. One of my favorite quotes up top: if stories come to you, care for them and learn to give them away when they are needed. Sometimes people need stories more than food to keep them to stay alive. It's a quote by Barry Lopez. I absolutely love it, and I think it's a great sort of precursor to my course. So I won't read the whole syllabus, obviously, that would be absolutely terrible. But I'm going to just get into a few of them. So I'll read to you the description here: development of effective communication skills across a range of personal and professional scenarios, interpersonal communication, networking, and best practices in both verbal and nonverbal communications, written communication skills for developing formal reports, drafting emails, and using social media. So we'll get a little more into that when we get into the different assignments and things that we do in my class. But what you should know about my class, and what I always tell students who are about to take my class, is that this is a class that will engage you in ways that you are probably maybe a little less comfortable with in your normal classes and ways you're used to studying and sort of connecting with others, particularly if you are maybe more in the science realm, or even the more sort of traditional business realm, because my class is very much focusing on practice and in the moment communication. So we do focus a lot on public speaking and not just sort of traditional, um, more academic presentations, but the real act of just getting up in front of people and talking. That can be storytelling, which we do a unit on. It can be doing more presentational, traditional academic presentations, presenting data, giving persuasive speeches, down to even giving a good toast at a wedding. And so it's usually a less sort of traditionally academic rigorous class than folks are used to, but very much uh, can be challenging for folks in the sense that it's out of many people's comfort zones. But I will tell you, usually the first week or two, I have students looking at me like, oh my goodness, what's happening? And am I going to be able to do this? And by the end, I tend to create a pretty solid community within the class, and folks who didn't know each other at all leave knowing each other, and even forming friendships because they're really forced to talk to each other in my class. And they end up really actually feeling more confident going into social situations, professional situations, and talking in front of people. So that's I think my main selling point, and something that my class is why my class is good for really any type of major. Um, and it is part of the leadership minor, which is now at Tufts, which is really incredible. But it's also available for folks in other areas to take as well. So here you can see, and this is a typical sort of syllabus you'll see at Tufts, where we have ways to contact, attendance policy, participation, what that looks like, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Very important at Tufts for me in particular. It's very important for me to state that all students of all identities will be respected and acknowledged in class and despite any identity, equally. And I always promise my students um, to be someone with open ears and someone who will not come with defensiveness if ever something feels hurtful or harmful, or there was one of those sort of icky moments in class or a microaggression occurs. My promise is always to to meet you with open ears and honor the emotional labor you have given to come and speak to me, and without defensiveness. So then generally you will see in most syllabuses anywhere sort of how the class is built, what goes into your grade. And it's a good thing to look at as you're choosing classes, or even once you get to school and you're sort of figuring out which class is good for you. You know, are there 8,000 writing assignments and dense reading that's not exactly your type of learning or pacing, where you think that might be a real struggle? Things like that. Um, Good to think about. We have a fair amount of written assignments and different assignments in my class. Um, but again, the focus tends to be what's happening in the classroom. And our some main assignments are a story of self, which is a really beautiful exercise we do in what's called public narrative, which is a practice from Harvard University in storytelling, thinking about a time in your life when you changed your mind and how we can shape that story into being something that is inspirational for others. And then we have students work in groups, giving different group presentations together, working together and presenting material. We do that in both a persuasive speech and a speech where you are trying to really teach your classmates some new information that they don't know, and taking that role on. And then my last class always is a reception, and everyone writes a toast like you would at a wedding or retirement party, folks get a little dressed up. We come in, I bring food in that day, I cook for folks, and we have a little actual reception where we raise glasses and everyone gives a toast, and it's a beautiful way to end. And then, like most syllabuses, I lay out a general sense of what we'll be doing in each class. I also keep it a bit vague, like many professors, because we sometimes don't want you to be overly prepared. And then at the end, you can see things like resources for our academic support, which is great at Tufts, and different policies. It's very, very great. All right, and now I'm going to stop sharing for now. Let's check on folks. Amazing. So we have a few more. And if you have any questions at any time, please send them through the chat or the Q&A. More than happy to answer them. And we have a new elevator pitch, Allegra from New Jersey. Amazing. I went to college in New Jersey. Love it. Pursuing a degree in psychology, specifically child study and human development, and possibly minoring in Spanish. My free time, I enjoy running and reading. Amazing, 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 awesome. Tufts also has some great sports teams. Many of my students are a part of them. They come in and from practice, or they tell me about games they've won. It's very cool. Awesome. All right, so now I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to have a very mini lecture in ideas of feedback. So let me just make sure everything's good. All right. So I shall share my screen again. Take us to a very all right. Thank you. And I will admit, my Zoom is a little rusty. It was very much during the pandemic, I was right in there, but I have to admit, so I'm a little rusty now, which honestly I think is a good thing, but all right, so this is one of the lessons that we talk about in my class, and it's about feedback. Oftentimes, giving and receiving feedback can be very intimidating for folks, and it's often one of the communication areas of concern or anxiety that folks will express on the first day, which is something we talk about. So I like to give this as sort of a framework and then open it up to students in thinking about, with this information, how can we maybe better give or receive feedback. So number one, there's three main feedback triggers. Number one is what we call a truth trigger. And that is when someone is put off by the content of the feedback itself. And often if it is actually untrue. Sometimes we get feedback that is categorically false. It's actually not right. It's not based in fact. And yeah, that actually should trigger almost anyone. On the other hand, I often include the idea that sometimes, however, if a truth is true, but something that the person receiving feedback is maybe not willing to accept or not in a place to accept at that time, that can sometimes be a truth trigger as well. So looking at those can be helpful in thinking about giving or receiving. Then we have number two, what is called an identity trigger. So that is when a person feels like their identity is somehow threatened, and it can happen whether the feedback was intentioned that way or not, even if it's true or not. So if we feel like feedback is saying something about us that we feel is not actually representative of our identity, or we feel it is in a way sort of threatening to our identity, or perhaps negatively commenting on something that we are proud of in our identity, any of the above, that is going to be a trigger. That's going to be a feedback trigger. And oftentimes you're going to see that whether you're giving or receiving, that might be a moment of really a triggering or activated response for folks, something to think of. Number 3 is what we call a relationship trigger, and it's based on the person giving feedback. So it really is about how someone might feel about who they are giving or receiving feedback to. So if one feels negatively or doesn't respect the person giving them feedback, it might make them discount that feedback. Sometimes, even if we don't like or respect someone, they may still have valuable feedback to provide. Alternatively, if one admires or likes the person giving them feedback, they may take it more seriously, regardless of the content or validity. So if you feel a certain type of way about somebody and you don't respect them, very likely we're not going to take their feedback like we would someone that we do respect. And, generally, I think that makes sense. And oftentimes that works in our favor. However, sometimes, even though we may not respect someone or they may not be a great person in certain ways, they might still be giving us feedback that is valuable, and seeing it from a perspective that we should perhaps take it in. On the other hand, and I usually give the example of being a young woman in comedy and coming up in comedy and having a lot of generally older white males in positions of power who were charismatic and charming and considered to be good comedians. And so naturally, I sort of respected them, and I took a lot of advice that, looking back now, was not actually great advice, and was contributing to a system in comedy that was not actually great, and was rooted in sexism, and I didn't actually need to take that feedback. So it's a double-edged sword with that relationship trigger, and we need to look at all the things. So that is my little spiel. And I would love to open it up now and think about, if we know those are 3 things that can really get to us: identity trigger, truth trigger, relationship trigger. Thinking about all those things and thinking about maybe our past experiences with giving and receiving feedback, what are maybe some things we can at least hypothesize are going to be a best practice in giving feedback? What are ways that we can make our feedback hit harder or be well received? And I'd love you to throw that out in the chat or the Q&A, and I will be ready to read those. Start with something positive, then follow up with something more constructive. Excellent, Sylvie. So yes, we often call this the compliment sandwich. So we sandwich a more critical or more negative piece of feedback between 2 pieces of positive feedback to kind of cushion the blow. It's a classic technique in business, and for a reason. It helps people to actually digest what they are taking in. If we feel like we are hit just with constant negativity, it can be really hard for folks to digest and to properly take that feedback in. So it also helps people really actually be able to process the negative feedback that they're getting. Yes, any others? Throw them out. Great. Maybe making sure that your tone of voice and body language is positive and open so it doesn't come off as aggressive. Yes, absolutely. And instead more positive. Yes, absolutely. Amazing, amazing. We actually talk a lot about body language in our class as well, and thinking about our tone. Whether it's intentional or not, sometimes folks can come off as being more critical when they're not. And that's something that we practice in my class. Excellent. Let the other person know that the feedback is not intended to harm an open dialogue, to allow them to question the feedback. Don't keep pressing the feedback if the person is not receptive. Excellent, excellent. Yes. And that's something my students talk about in class as well. Really coming from a place of, we're all the intentions here are we're all in the same boat, we're all in the same team. We want to see a good result of whatever this is, and this is where I'm coming from. And try to make it as calm, suggestion like and encouraging as possible. Try to make this better. Excellent. Through XYZ. Yes, excellent comment. Yes, if we don't give any real specific advice, it's very hard for people to actually apply that feedback. So that's excellent. And yes, framing it in an encouraging way and with a calm voice. Absolutely. Claudia, in my AP research class this week, my teacher had us peer review the lower classmen's AP seminar papers and made it very, very clear that we need to watch our tone and anticipate that the person receiving feedback won't be able to understand a blunt tone, while remembering that these people do not know us at all, so we shouldn't come off as overly critical. Excellent. Yes, yes. Wow. That's so applicable to what we're talking about right now. Absolutely. So particularly if we don't know someone, we can't just come at them very, very blunt or intensely. They're not going to probably take that in well. So yes, focusing on being clear, being open, having a more sort of neutral tone of voice, even relaxing our face, things like that. All things that we actually practice in my class. Yes, you can always tell the person who you are giving feedback to something they did well, and then go into things they can improve on. Keep the language based on choice. You could do this, maybe excellent. Yes. So again, sort of thinking about that sort of compliment sandwich kind of approach, but also, yes, thinking about the language. You could do this, you could try the excellence. Avoiding statements that sound like you are telling someone this is how you are, this is what you do, as opposed to, have you thought of doing this? Try this. Absolutely. Intent versus impact. Excellent. Yes. Recognizing this is a feedback giver or receiver. Yes, absolutely. So particularly sometimes when we are maybe receiving feedback that might feel harsh or might make us feel a certain type of way, remembering this is feedback. This is what a person is doing. This might be their style of feedback. This is how we go. Absolutely. Yes. If you have any more, keep on going. I'm going to bring up a few other things that often we talk about in class. So thinking about the idea of a relationship trigger, sometimes we got to think about, am I the one that should be giving this feedback to this person? Sometimes we don't have a choice, and that's a tricky situation. But in maybe more personal situations, maybe you have a roommate situation where you live in a little cohort, there's multiple roommates, you have tension with a certain person, maybe something needs to be said, and maybe it's a more strategic move for you to think, I'm actually not going to be the one to give this feedback. I'm going to have somebody else give it for me. And then another idea to think about is, oh, I just had it. Look at this, and it went away. Communication skills. Thinking about, you ever have things disappear from your mind? This is something we actually talk about in my class. And I actually always say, acknowledge the moment. It's okay. Everybody has these moments. And if you remember, great. If you don't, you got to move on. So I'm going to give myself a second or two to remember. And if not, I'm going to move on. So yes, avoiding tone, thinking about, should I give this person feedback or not? Should I give it to someone else? Oh, yes. And then think about when we are giving feedback and how. So if we are not in person, the email of feedback or the maybe even constructive criticism email can be a tough one to send. And sometimes we have to also think, should I send this in writing, or should I meet with someone in person? If feedback is coming from a place of activation or anger on our part, sometimes we need to pause and not send that letter or that email, or not even respond in the moment. Sometimes we need to take a little step back and think about how we're going to best give someone feedback, even if it's a more personal issue, in a way that they're actually going to hear it and respect where you're coming from and hope to actually change their behavior. Because if we're just given feedback in a way that is sort of tearing things apart or really explaining why we can't stand certain behaviors, it might not actually go anywhere. It might just go into a place of resentment and not turn into action that is beneficial for us. So excellent. Awesome. Oh, and that's mine. Guthrie. Guthrie. All right. That's Guthrie. He hears something and he decides to communicate quite a bit. Oh, great. It's okay if you don't remember. It might not be important. Try to call the idea the moment you recall. Oh, excellent. So yes, if you might not remember a specific thing, just moment you recall. Excellent. And now I want you to think a little bit about maybe a time where feedback was, whether you were giving or receiving feedback and it did not go well. If anyone, write just a little bit about sort of what was happening around there. What was the situation? I'd love to hear that and see if maybe we can find themes in that. So go ahead and send that out whenever you're ready. Oh, in front of my whole class, very, very blunt and very critical towards the beginning of the school year too. Yeah, not fun, not fun, not a great teaching practice, I would argue. If we're being critical and harsh in front of a whole group of people, particularly when we don't know somebody and we don't know how somebody is oriented within a group of people as well, not a great move. I would advise that teacher to take a different approach. Thank you for sharing that, Claudia. It felt like being judged rather than the person giving positive feedback. Absolutely. And that can be a big thing. If we feel like someone's just judging us and just sort of commenting on their own personal opinion and way, that just how they want to judge us, not going to be a great move. Yeah, much better to receive it in a way that feels like in a tone and delivered in a way that is actually about giving us tools to do better as opposed to just judging. Excellent. Sylvie, when my soccer coach called me out in front of the team to critique me, it felt like I couldn't even listen or take his words seriously because I was just embarrassed. Absolutely. So, and then we're talking about a real trigger where we are then, our nervous system is going to be activated and affected. We're embarrassed. We go into a place where we're absolutely not in a place to take feedback. Yes. So in front of other people is a big one. And that's something that in leadership, you do have to think about. Is this something that is beneficial for the entire group to hear? If so, maybe it is worth it. You still better deliver it in a way that the person you are giving the feedback to does not feel singled out and does not feel like they are being sort of put on trial in front of an entire group of people. That's terrible. And if it's not beneficial for the entire group to hear, pull somebody aside. Absolutely. I had this teammate and we had very different communication styles. We carpooled to practice. One day I asked her for feedback and she didn't want to give any, even though she clearly did have a critique. I asked her why she wouldn't give me feedback when she would give it to others, and it felt like she didn't think I could take it. She then did give a piece of feedback, and I didn't react well because it felt like what she was saying was factually incorrect, which it was. Yes, so a truth trigger, which is a pretty valid one. If something is not true, that's just, it's not important feedback to receive, and it can be very frustrating. And that I can see how that would also be an extra frustrating moment when you are wanting constructive criticism and someone is sort of making a judgment about your ability to take it or not, put together, arguably, it could seem as if that whole intention was a bit manipulative. And that's, yes, can be difficult. And I will say sometimes it is a valid concern if we feel like someone might not have the strongest stomach in the sense of taking feedback. But that is your job as a leader to think about how I can best frame this in a way for this person to hear it. And sometimes coming from the place too of thinking of it more as a conversation and something that you two are engaging in together as opposed to just spotlighting on them, and maybe opening it with, this is something that I've struggled with as well. This is something I know I struggle with as well, or I've struggled with in the past, and sharing ways that have helped you, or sort of maybe even trying to create a sort of mutual holding each other accountable or helping out with things can also be great too. Even if you're in an authority position, that can be a really great way to go about it. Great. So I do color guard and I have a teammate who often gives feedback to me and to others, which can be helpful. But sometimes she says it in a tone that's like, I know that you don't, which is not always, I know this and you don't, which is not always the way you'd like to hear feedback. 100%. I'd argue it's never the way you want to hear feedback. Even as a teacher, as an educator, even if I'm working with very young students, I try very hard to not come from a expert standpoint of I'm the expert and you are the people who listen to me. No, everybody in the room can teach me something at all times, I think, even no matter the age, no matter what. It's never helpful to frame something as in, I know more than you and this is why I'm telling you. No, we just know different things. I might have a different expertise or more years of life, more years of experience, and I'm shedding light on you. Absolutely. Last month, I led a student-led theater production where I had the idea to create a zoom-in art promotion for the play. After I had spent 6 hours making it, my group member called it horrible and said, no one will like this. I felt undervalued within my team in this circumstance. I would have used kinder tone when addressing this issue while also giving examples of ways I could have improved rather than just saying it was bad. Absolutely. And being someone with a theater background, I know that oftentimes artists can be very, very harsh critics and not the most tactful in their feedback. And oftentimes when people feel there's a shared agency and people all feel connected to something and the end result is something that people are holding even parts of their identity in, it can be easy to sort of forget that the other people on your team are in the same place and are coming from those intentions as well. But yes, just calling things horrible, or saying no one's gonna like this and calling things bad, it's not great feedback. We can't really do much with that. I don't know how to change it. I don't know what really is bad about it or why you think people won't like it when you tell me that. So yes, not very helpful. So when the feedback giver tries to force superiority in their feedback just because they're in a position higher. Absolutely. And like I said, I think even if you are in a position of authority, that's not the way to do it. A more holistic approach, I think, is almost always the best way to go about things. It's as a leader, if you are someone that people feel comfortable with, and feel like you're lifting people up, making people feel like they are on the same level as you, as opposed to just respecting you, and using feedback as a way to sort of push that authority, you probably won't have people who want to work with you as much as the people who are leading in a different way. Absolutely. Great. These are all very astute and very great examples. Thank you so much for that. And now I want you to turn the focus pivot it a bit and think about times that we are nervous in communication settings. Very often, the way we think about that is the idea of public speaking, which it's not a coincidence that it is statistically one of the top shared biggest fears of everyone. Really up there with death, actually. It's extremely vulnerable. And I want you to think about, and whether it be public speaking or even just interacting on a more personal level, thinking about applying to colleges, interviewing, going to a new setting, meeting new people. What are areas that make you nervous in communication? And what happens physically or in your body when that is happening? I talk to my students about having word recall issues. I actually have dealt with long-term Lyme disease for a couple of years, and that really does sort of inflame the brain. And in moments of stress or nervousness, it is enacted even more. So I deal with having word recall issues, things that were just in my head, or even the name of a celebrity that is maybe one of my favorites disappears. And then what happens is I will get more nervous by that, and my face will get a little red. Sometimes my hands start shaking. Sometimes I feel myself start to sweat a little more in the palm of my hands or my temples. All those things can happen, or my voice shakes, anything like that. I'd love to know, what are maybe moments that are of most anxiety inducing to you, and what are things that sort of happen in your body when you feel anxious or nervous in a situation where you are speaking with or in front of people. Think about it. Go ahead, call it out. By call it out, I mean write it in our little fun chat that I will be very happy to read for you. Great. It's when I have too many ideas and don't have much time or don't have the words to concisely put it. Yep. So I kind of become nervous. I'm a person that requires patience to be listened from. Absolutely. Yes. And actually that self-awareness is so important. And that's something that is great to actually share with people. I'm a person that requires patience to be listened from. Um, sometimes when my ideas are jumbled, it doesn't come out right. So just give me a few seconds. There's not a person in the world that doesn't understand that. Oftentimes we get so nervous about being judged, we forget that almost everybody is judging themselves more and more nervous about themselves, to the point that they don't even have time to judge us in the way that we assume that we are going to be judged. And just opening up about things that maybe make us nervous or might be a little bit of challenges or differences in ways we communicate or things that we need, throwing it out there right up front makes it so much even not an issue anymore. So public speaking makes me nervous, but always I've recognized it as stress because I find it very exciting. Yes, I might feel my heart rate go up and start shaking on some level. I hate that my voice wavers because I'm so amped up and excited. Absolutely. And that is incredible self-awareness. That's something I tell to my students all the time in my class when they say, but I always get nervous before a speech. No matter how much I practice, I still get a little nervous. And I say, that is not actually a bad thing. That is your adrenaline and your excitement and the fact that you care about this coming on. Little bit of performance jitters is actually a way that you can really actually energize your performance and go out there and deliver what you want in a great way. But absolutely, when it starts to affect our voice and heart rate, things to do. Things that we actually work on and talk about in my class. Absolutely. in presentations, I stand, yes, my hands shake, my voice, absolutely. The voice is a trickier one. Our voice is very much a vulnerable instrument that is impacted by our everything we feel. And handshaking, big one as well. I often tell students, clasp, place them in front of you when in doubt. And if you need to be holding a paper, try to put it down somewhere. Try to get a stand or something if you can. Just get it out. To use vocal fillers when I'm nervous. Yes. Also, sometimes I focus on what I want to say instead of 100% listening to the question and then taking a moment to think of the answer. Absolutely, totally normal. As I just used a vocal filler, something that we do very normally all the time, particularly in American culture. And when we get more nervous, we use them more. Definitely something we talk about and work on in my class. And also totally normal to be in our heads trying to think about sort of maybe what the next thing we're going to say is. And then when it comes time for us to respond, we feel maybe even a little less prepared. So, yeah, I really feel most nervous when bringing up politics. I love civil discourse and feel it should be more encouraged, but I never know how others are going to take it. Absolutely. And I think that is a very poignant and unfortunate and truthful look at where we are today in society with a lot of things. But I completely agree that we need to have civil discourse, and it should be encouraged, and practicing and just finding ways to do it and bring it up in a way that folks don't feel threatened and folks feel it actually empowered to express their thoughts is great skill to have. And the more you practice it and the more conversations you do have will help you figure that out. So be presenting in an assembly in front of our school. 600 people was very scary. My hands started shaking with the paper I was holding. Typical fight or flight symptoms. Yes, increased heart rate, sweating, stuff like that. Absolutely. That is intimidating. 660 people is intimidating. Absolutely. And unfortunately, one of the only things to really help us get over a fear of public speaking is doing it more and more. And that's something that we do in my class. Almost every single class, people are up in front of the entire class and speaking, because the more you normalize it, the more you just practice, the easier it will get, I promise. I get really nervous before public speaking and also important conversations that might contain confrontations. I usually start speaking super fast, but once I start talking and once I get the flow, I don't feel as stressed and I'm able to speak slower and more concisely. Amazing. You've already got tools. I usually get nervous while talking or public speaking when the speech's outcome significantly impacts my future. When a lot of weight is put on a single speech, the pressure to do it makes perfect sense to be nervous. Absolutely. I often feel my stomach churn and my voice fumble. Yes, those are high pressure situations. Again, I would say even in a high pressure situation, don't be afraid to acknowledge things. This is, oh, wow, this is a little nerve-wracking. This is a big thing. Sorry, my voice is shaking a bit. Acknowledging that, throwing it out doesn't make you weak. What, you're not superhuman? Shocking. No, everybody's voice shakes in those situations. Probably no one that you're interviewing with or presenting in front of is confused about what's happening. They all completely get it. Acknowledging that, moving on, can really be helpful. This in politics, I agree with the statement on politics. It feels like there's a lot I know, but also a lot that I don't. And having civil discourse is a way to get informed, but has become so polarized. Excellent thought. And you're absolutely right. And nobody knows everything. And the way that we learn more is to talk with other people. Absolutely. So encouraging folks, even if it's your own friends, your own social circle, encouraging everyone to have that kind of discourse and coming in with those intentions can be a really beautiful thing to do. And I absolutely would encourage doing that. I think a lot while talking in a discussion, what would other people think if I utter the words in this way? Absolutely. Yes, we're all going to get in our heads. And sometimes just reminding yourself, and we actually listened to a podcast in my class that talks just about this and goes into some statistics about how people actually judge you so much less than you think. And the way that the things that you are worried about are often just so much more amplified in your own mind than in other folks' opinions. One time I did bring up my voice shaking when I was younger, and a teacher gave me a weird look. It felt like there was no point in bringing it up. Well, I think that teacher was probably not using best practices. And speech trauma or performance trauma is very real. If we have situations, particularly when we are young, when we feel discouraged, we feel embarrassed or laughed at or discouraged in moments where we were trying to speak up or be vulnerable or present, it absolutely affects us as we get older, and it absolutely makes us less confident and less excited about delving into a situation like that again. And again, unfortunately, one of the only ways to get better at it is to just try and do it more and more and practice more and more, and to do it in an environment that feels safe enough to do that in, to feel safe enough to fail in, to feel safe enough to maybe have another situation where voice is shaking, things like that. That happens in my class all the time, and I welcome it. And in the moment, we talk through it. I'll give students options, and people realize, oh, it's okay. I can do this. Nobody in class judges me. Everyone understands. In fact, this is helpful for people to see because they're all worried about the same things, and they see that I can do this and we can move on. And that's really one of the huge goals of my class. I'm going to share my screen one last time as we get into our last few minutes, because I have some notes about this from my class this semester. So my students talked a lot about things that happens in their bodies. Some of the common ones, like a lot of us brought up the idea of a racing heart or palpitations, butterflies or feeling nauseous, lightheadedness or feeling faint, increased sweating, often in the palms of our hands or in the temples, vocal shaking and cracking, and irregular breathing. So we talk about some more concrete methods of managing nerves and remembering that all of these are also skills, and skills that must be practiced. Any form of self-care, any form of regulating our system that might be irregulated, we also need to practice, and we have to really give ourselves that. So something I often say, do not fight anxiety. Do not fight it. Try not to get into panicky mode, and instead reframe. Instead of being like, oh my God, oh my gosh, I'm panicking, what's happened? Think about actually saying, I welcome this anxiety, even worse and worse and worse, and I am fine. Acknowledge to yourself that things are happening. Okay. Oh, instead of being like, oh my God, I'm sweating. Oh my God, does everybody know that I'm sweating? Do you think people can see? No, oh, yep, my palms are a little sweaty. I'm a little sweaty. Just acknowledging it to yourself in that sort of tone, in that frame, moving on, can be a very powerful tool. Again, we talked about this. Remember, people care way less than you think. And everyone in the audience understands that it is nerve-wracking to get up and speak. You can acknowledge to them you're a little nervous, or take a second. Wow, it's nerve-wracking to be up here. Or wow, look at how many of you there are. Absolutely. Not one person in this audience can be like, why is this person nervous? What's going on? Everybody gets it. Calling that out and just acknowledging that can sometimes help us as a speaker feel much more confident and then continue. Also, telling a little joke right up front can really help. If getting up there, making the audience laugh with you kind of instantly makes things feel more like a conversation, more like we're in somebody's living room and we're all on the same level. Then deep breathing, classic, and a classic for a reason. Really taking the time to breathe in deeply before a speech or presentation. and mindfully. We talk about the square method in my class and practice that. So breathing in for 8 seconds, holding your breath for 8 seconds, exhaling for 8 seconds, holding for 8 seconds, and then repeating. Doing that a couple times before a speech, before a moment of maybe an interview, anything, can really help us regulate. Tense and release. So the practice of sort of visualizing the tension in your body, really good to do at night, in bed, thinking about your feet, tensing all the muscles in your feet, releasing, going up, calves, legs, doing the same, releasing, stomach, until you're up to your head, and then you tense your entire body, release, and really sort of try to visualize the tension in your body, the tension that you're actually exasperating when you tense, and then watching it, visualizing it leave. Can be a very, very effective thing to do, particularly if you do it like leading up to an event that is making you nervous. Then also just doing a quick meditation in the morning of a big presentation can do everything. Something I tell my students all the time: hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. There's nothing worse for nerves than being dehydrated. And there's also nothing worse for your voice than being dehydrated. No amount of vocal training can protect from just complete dehydration. You got to be hydrated. And your parasympathetic nervous system will not be working well if you are dehydrated. Something I also tell students: do not drink coffee on an empty stomach of the day of your presentation. I don't care if you do it every other day of the year, don't do it that day. Do not spike your cortisol. Also, put acidity and dehydration through your throat. Get up on stage with nothing in you but that coffee. Just don't do it. If I can leave you with one thing going into the college process, don't drink coffee on an empty stomach and hydrate. Amazing. So I would love to see any of you in my class. It was such a pleasure meeting you virtually. Something we do at the end of every class is we get in a circle. We say one word that we're taking from today. So if you want to do that virtually and just throw out a word that you are taking with you after this class, anything you remember or anything that feels like sort of the moral of the story, go for it. Respect. Beautiful. Breathe. Yes. Awesome. And you can keep going. Please sign off. I'm also going to compassion, empowered, beautiful. And I'm going to leave you with a mantra I leave all of my students at the end of every class, and that is that you are all wonderful, talented, and important. I truly mean it. I can tell even just from your responses tonight. Empathy, truth, I love it. So if you have any more questions, you can find me on the Tufts website. Please feel free to shoot me an email. I would love to talk to you or answer any questions. Thank you. Who cares? Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. You were fantastic. Have an amazing night. And I wish you all the best of luck in any future pursuits. And if you do come to Tufts, or even if you don't, I hope that our paths cross again. Thank you and have a wonderful night, everyone. Bye.